Hello guys, and welcome you to my new series. So what is it all about? This is the series where I would like to show you my journey to 2400 ratings, because maybe some of you already know that this would be my goal as a player, and here I would like to show you my best games on this journey. So the first game, what I will show you, it happened in the Luxembourgish Championship during this weekend, and I was playing against a very strong FIDE master with 2308 rating, and I will show you what happened here. So let's get started. E4, C5, and my opponent played D4, and now I would like to stop here for a few moments, because I would like to tell you some stuff which is more like related to the competitive chess, not only for this game, but in just common. So the thing is that my opponent surprised me with this opening. I wasn't prepared for that. I was preparing for totally something else, and I'm pretty sure that my opponent was super prepared, because he made this move without any hesitation. So the thing is that why I played G6 here, the reason is that I wanted to go into some sidelines instead of getting to the main line. And what's the reason of that? I would choose a worse sideline than getting into my opponent's preparation. I think it's kind of important, but it's only my style. I know that G6 is not the best continuation here, but I would prefer to do that instead of falling into some tricks in the opening, which I'm not sure. Secondly, why I decided to get into this sideline, because there are many of them, and I decided to go into something very rare. It was the explanation is very simple. So I was thinking that if somebody plays a Morra Gambit with white, probably he is a super tactical player and he wants to attack me, and I will be the prey in this game. But I didn't want to be a prey in this game. I wanted to. I'm also a tactical player. I'm also an active tactical player. So I wanted to get into some opening that I don't have to defend too much, and I would like to push my play style on my opponent, and would do something different than a Morra Gambit where he can actively play and attack me. So that's why I decided some strange stuff here. And the third thing that maybe some of you would say that oh, the G6 here is kind of bad because the engine says is plus 0.7 for white or something like that. But to be honest, I don't care. I don't care what the engine says in the opening, because at the end of the day, when you are in the playing hall, only matters your knowledge and your opponent's knowledge. Nothing else. Nobody cares what the engine says when you are when you are there, when you are under pressure, when you have to make decisions next to the board. Then nobody cares what the engine says. So I'm not a kind of chicken player, and I would like to teach you like street fighters. And if you want to win a game, especially with black against a stronger opponent, then you have to take risk, and that's how the things go. So I decided to go for the G6. Now, of course, white has a few options like knight c3, knight f3, and many others. So of course d5 is also an option, but probably taking the pawn is the most challenging for black. So white decided to go for this. Bishop g7. And if you check the position now, that maybe you can understand what I was talking about. Then now white is going to try to keep the c5 pawn, because now he has a material advantage. He has to try to keep the c5 pawn on the board, and now he has to protect this pawn. Now he will have some trouble with the development. So now I'm not going to be the prey in this game, I'm going to be the predator in this game, that what he wanted to be, but it's not gonna happen because I choose some sidelines and not get into his play style in the Morra Gambit. c3 is, of course, is probably the main line. Queen c7. Now, of course, I would like to take the c5 pawn. Bishop e3. Knight f6. And yes, my opponent wasn't really prepared in this opening, which makes sense because it's extremely rare, and he already made a misaccurate move here. F3 would be the best continuation for him, what I expected, because this knight would belong to a3 in my opinion. It could go to b5 or c4. Probably this is the most uncomfortable for black. I guess I don't have time for castling, because after that knight a3 could be very annoying. It could arrive to b5 or c4 in the next move. Even he can think about protecting the pawn soon, so it's not that easy. I have to get into the action, and after f3 probably I have to play b6, and I was thinking about that. I wanted to do that. If he takes the pawn, start with the knight e3 first, sorry. We can take the pawn in this case, knight b5, queen b7, and probably I'm alright here, because the pawn, if he takes the pawn, I can play a6, and now something will hanging, I mean the b2 will hanging, but if, for example, if he goes back to a3, then in this case I can sacrifice a knight in the center, because after that taking the pawn on b2 is even more strong, because I managed to open up the diagonal for the dragon bishop. So if we go back until here, probably he has to play e5. In this case I go back to knight g8. The e5 is hanging, so f4 is necessary, and knight h6. That knight will go to f5, and I would say this position comes with mutual chances. Probably black is fine here. He has some development advantage, the b2 will hanging, so it's not that easy for white to continue. And don't forget one important thing, it's not a position like a Morra Gambit player would like to have. Okay, so if you accept the pawn, probably this is more natural. I take back the pawn, queen b3, for example, to make some pressure on the b6 pawn, and d5. And now it's extremely not clear from here. It's like he can take the pawn with the bishop, for example, but in this case, queen d6, black has an excellent compensation for the sacrifice material. We are exploding the center. The king, the white's king is in the middle, so we have development advantage. So I think it's more than great here. He can also take with the queen, of course. In this case, we can exchange and take the pawn in the center, and I think it's the same. Black has a great compensation for the sacrifice material. So let's go back until here, but by the way, probably that would be the better option for him. But he decided to play knight d2 instead of f3, which is, of course, seems very natural, but I think it's a bit inaccurate. Castle, and now it's very strange, but it's not that easy to continue the development for white. Let's see why I say that. Of course, he would like to castle as soon as possible, but knight f3 face with knight g4, and it's going to be a very annoying knight on g4 for him. The c5 will hanging. Probably if I can manage to exchange the e3 bishop, black is going to be more than fine. If he develop with the bishop first, then in this case I can go to knight a6, because you know he has to take this knight probably. He has to exchange this knight, but in this case he lose a tempi with that. He has to take it, and now it's much better than, for me, of course, for black, than if white could manage to take it from f1. Now we take back f3, for example, and d5, like happened in the game. You will see it's going to be closely the same. If he plays h3 to prevent knight g4, in this case we can already start the attack with b6, take, and it's going to be very similar that we already saw before. We can push the e4 pawn, we can play to d5. White has problems with the development, the king is still on e1, so I think the compensation is great for the sacrifice material. So my opponent played f3, which is very, very natural, and I'm most likely sure that he was happy with his position, but I was also happy with my position, and now I had two different plans here. I was thinking about b6 and I was thinking about d5, what I played in the game. b6 could be great, it's a very typical plan as you can see in the previous lines. If he takes, I take. For example, knight c4 can meet with d5 immediately, and it's going to be a chaos on the board very soon. Or queen b3 can meet with knight c6, bishop b6, queen e5, and it's going to be the same. It's a very messy position. d5 is coming, everything will hanging after after black can destroy the center. So it's really not easy. I went for d5 instead of b6, and the reason is very clear. That there is a principle to have the king in the middle. The king in the middle is very safe until the center is closed. So what's after that? If I can manage to open up the center, then he could find himself in a trouble with his king. And also it's the same on the development disadvantage. Development disadvantage is fine until the position is closed. So that means black has to open up the position, and that's going to give him some dynamic counterplay chances. So you have to know a few of these principles and ideas to have the right strategy. But you may ask that is the d5 better than b6? Probably I would say it's not better. It's also important to note here that in a given position, usually there are more good moves, not just only one. So which move do you choose? It's really up to your play style. And that's why I suggest you to have at least 3 candidates moves, because if you have more candidates, then you can decide which one you would like to go with. And now in this case, I wanted to explode the center. I followed this principle that I knew, so I went for a d5. Of course, white has to take this pawn from the c1, and we took it back. And I took it back with the e pawn. And now, once again, I would like to push the d5 and rook e8. But it's very important to note that now black has many positional disadvantage. Black has material disadvantage. Black also has pawn structural disadvantage. But what we got for these positional disadvantages, we got counterplay chances, we got tactical chances. So we have to be fast. We have to attack the opponent kings as soon as possible. We have to open the center up, and that could be the compensation for the positional disadvantage. We do not have to time from now to continue the game in a normal classical way, because if you have a positional disadvantage like that, you have to take some risk to come back to the game, and you have to try to find the balance between the positional and dynamic things. We have to find the tactical way to strike on white's king. c4 he played, very natural, he prevented the d5. Rook e8, d5 is a threat once again, and I cannot repeat enough times that you can imagine that a Morra Gambit player wouldn't want to find himself in a position like that where he has to defend. He wanted to attack, he wanted to sacrifice material in the Morra Gambit to get some activity and attacking chances, but now black has these chances, and white is the one who has to attack. So that was my strategy when I decided to play g6 in the second move instead of going into the main line. So d5 is a threat. Probably white's knight e2 would be the best solution here, but in this case I can also play d5, bishop f4. Of course he has to come out from the pin, queen a5, he takes the pawn. Now the surprise is coming. Black sacrifices the pawn, the knight for the pawn. He takes the pawn and knight d7. And this position is super messy. Like we have a huge material disadvantage here, but it's almost impossible to solve white's king's position. Now his minor pieces are totally pinned down, and everything is binded. And now the knight c5 is coming. After that, knight d3 is coming. There is a pin on the e line. The b2 is hanging. Everything is hanging. So I think it's an extremely complicated position. But I would be more than fine with that, because it's also important to know that attacking is always easier than defending, and most of the people prefer to attack than defend. So yeah, I would be happy with that position. My opponent played queen b3 here, which perhaps the first mistake, but it wasn't easy to find a better move, since the d5 was coming, and after queen b3 he managed to protect the d5 threat. Now black has many candidates, and I think that was the first point of my game where I wasn't sure. I was thinking about, a5 seems very natural to push the a pawn to the a4, knight a6 to knight c5, knight d7 to knight c5. So there are many options, and also there is a very interesting move here, which is b5, sacrificing one more pawn, because if he takes with the pawn we can play d5. It could be also interesting. Knight b d7 of course is very natural, and after that I could go to c5, but I'm decided to go for a move which probably not the best, but I really like that. I like that so much, and that was the knight d7, but with the d knight, with the f knight, sorry. And after that I will have the same outpost on c5 for my knight, but I'm also preparing the f5 and exploding the center once again. So if I cannot play the d5, I still have the f5, so I went for that. Queen a3 he played. It's very normal. He went out from the knight c5. He could move it. He had to move it anyway. Knight c5, and rook d1 he played. And according to the engine, that was his only move. It's very interesting. Everything else would lead to a favorable position for black. To be honest, I do not want to really talk about what happens if he exchanged that knight. If you are familiar with this kind of position, then you can understand that white totally weakens out on the black squares, and that's more than enough compensation for white. There is a very juicy knight outpost on d4, which I will get very soon. This dragon bishop is going to be a monster, and this bishop is just horrible. So he went for rook d1. That was his best continuation. I played a5. Probably knight c6 would be a bit more accurate, but it's also not that bad. And my opponent played b4 here. And to be honest, I was thinking a lot in this position. I was calculating a lot, of course, about the rook sacrifice. If I take the pawn, he takes the queen, the rook, sorry. Here I was thinking to close the queen out with knight a6, or how can I catch this queen, but probably I cannot. Probably my best option is bishop d7. Now I take away the a4 escaping square from him, so now it's not possible to take the knight and escape on a4 at least. Of course he still have to take the knight, to ease down the position, we take it back, knight b3 and f5, and once again a really complicated, messy position. We have a huge attack in the center. The white's queen is totally out of the game. So yes, probably white's situation is not easy, but I tell you a secret here. Why didn't I go into that? Normally, if you have a superior position or it's not worse, then normally you shouldn't risk that much, because it's this risk here is not necessary. If you have a way worse position, if you have a losing position, in that case you have to take the risk because you have nothing to lose. So you can make as much risk as you want, but when your position is okay, when your position is fine or superior, then you should avoid any kind of risk, because it's not necessary. And if you miscalculate just one tiny move, you know, then you can lose the whole game, which is simple, not necessary in this case. So I went for knight e6 instead of getting into the rook sacrifice. My opponent played knight b3, and of course, if the d5 doesn't work, then we go for the f5. And now we would like to continue our strategy. We would like to open up the files and diagonals to the opponent's king in the middle. He took the pawn on a5, knight c6, and now we have 2 pawns less, and also the d6 is hanging. But you know what I was mentioned before, that if you have a huge positional disadvantage like that, like we have 2 pawns less, it's a huge disadvantage on the positional scale, then having 2 pawns less or having 3 pawns less actually doesn't matter. Black has to give a checkmate, otherwise black will lose the game. Doesn't matter if he has 2 pawns less or 3 pawns less. So it doesn't matter anything now. We have to just follow our plan. We have to get our pieces into the action, and we have to give checkmate, otherwise we will lose the game because we have a huge positional disadvantage. Queen d6, by the way, doesn't work in my opinion. I think we have a very nice check on c3 first, because now knight d2 or bishop d2 doesn't work since the queen is hanging. So white has to play king f2, and in this case we go to queen f7, and now the rook d8 is extremely strong threat, and also the king is in a pin, so taking the e4 is also a nice threat, and everything is hanging. I'm pretty sure that white cannot survive this, and he will fall very soon. So my opponent played rook d5 here, and protected the a5 pawn also. I give a check, and my opponent played king f2. He could play bishop d2, but that unfortunately doesn't work because knight b5 is really nice, and there will be a fork on c2, and also the rook is hanging. So he had to go to king f2. I played knight b4 once again. Rook is hanging, rook d1, and probably that was the next move was the hardest decision in my whole game, and also I had some time trouble. I think I had like 2 minutes here, because the next move is a very committed move, which is if it isn't lead to a checkmate, then I could find myself in a trouble. So I played f4. And why I say that? If I cannot give a checkmate, then I closed the center, I closed the position, and in this case probably white is going to be more than fine. His king is going to be more than fine. So now it's a super must for a checkmate. But fortunately I calculated precisely, even with the time pressure, and it was good enough. Doesn't matter if he plays bishop d2 or bishop c1. We will see the difference, but it's not that much. Bishop c1 happened in the game, and now the surprise was coming. Rook sacrifice on a5, and of course now it's untouchable with the queen, since knight d3 and we take the queen. He had to take it with the knight. It's an only move. Queen c5 check. Now king e2 is an only move once again. Knight d4 check. Now, of course, it's an only move once again. He cannot go to f2 since I give a check in the worst case scenario, but probably there could be some checkmate also. He had to take it with the rook. Queen d4. And now I think the game is over. We have so many threats, like if I calculated well, the rook sacrifice on e4 is going to lead to a checkmate also, but bishop g4 is also going to be very uncomfortable for white, because he cannot take it since queen e4, and it's going to be a checkmate. Otherwise, if he doesn't take it, then we will take the e4, since the bishop pins the king. So he played bishop f4 in the game, and now it's also a very interesting thing to the end that I wanted to mention. I played queen d3, king f2, and of course now bishop d4 or bishop e1 is winning. I don't know why I played bishop e1, but it also wins the game, because if he takes, I take the queen, and my opponent made a few more moves, and he decided to give up. And I wanted to go back until here, because when I went home and I checked the game with the engine said that the rook sacrifice is a checkmate in 9 moves. Of course, I had no chance to calculate that, because I had just a few minutes on the clock. But to be honest, that what I wanted to tell you, what I already mentioned before, that if you have a superior position like that, if you are already winning, just try to keep the things simple. No risk, nothing, because if you make any miscalculation, then you are going to be very angry if you manage to lose a game like that. So I wasn't even thinking about this move. I don't care if it's a checkmate or not, but taking down the queen is the easiest solution, and the game is going to be over. So yes, that was the first game of this series. I hope you enjoyed that, and I really hope that I can show you some of these examples very soon. We will see how our journey goes and what I can show you in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye.